And now I'm joined by Michael Carpenter, Senior Fellow from the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Michael, so glad to have you here with us on World News tonight.
Good to be with you.
Michael, let me begin by asking you a little bit about the EU, the gathering of the EU foreign ministers in Cyprus. Now, Kaja Kallas, of course, the EU's top diplomat, has ruled out Europe acting as a neutral mediator between Ukraine and Russia, right? I mean, what message do you think that Brussels is trying to send with that statement?
Well, as you know, there have been a lot of calls for EU officials or EU appointees, whether it be Gerhard Schroeder, who was first mooted, or Angela Merkel or various other names, to take the role essentially that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have held for the United States over the course of the last 18 months and negotiate some sort of resolution between Russia and Ukraine. I think the EU is wisely avoiding getting into this game, and in my humble opinion, ought to focus really on arming Ukraine and providing the frozen Russian assets that are in the European jurisdictions to Ukraine to sort of lengthen Ukraine's runway and to show to the Kremlin that its runway is dramatically shortened. I think that's the most consequential thing the Europeans can do. And I'm glad that this upcoming meeting of foreign ministers is going to stay away from appointing a negotiator who would try to find some sort of equidistance between the two sides, because that's a losing formula, both for the United States and for the European Union.
How do you think Russia reacted to this decision?
Well, you know, I think the Russian side is eager to test all manner of off-ramps. I don't think President Putin right now is ready to do any sort of a deal other than a deal that would enshrine his maximalist goals, which are subjugation of Ukraine and additional territorial conquest. So I don't think he's ready. But I think he wants to test and probe and see sort of what the European Union's red lines would be as compared to the United States. And certainly he's feeling a lot of heat at home. I mean, at this point, we've had about 1,400,000 Russian casualties, estimates by some, including the UK Ministry of Defense, of 500,000 Russians killed in this war, which is now lasted longer than Russia's involvement in the Second World War. So the economic and the social implications of this are starting to take root in Russia, and I think Putin is very much aware of that. Mm-hmm. But in my view, he's not yet ready to do a deal that would be anywhere near a just and durable agreement for peace.
But what about European leaders? If I ask you, what do you think their biggest concern is when it comes to potential talks with Putin or with the Kremlin, with Russian leaders in general?
Right. Well, when you say European leaders, I mean, here's the trick. So Europe is not entirely united on this, although I wouldn't overstate the divergence of views within Europe, but certainly leaders in parts of Western and Southern Europe would like to begin some sort of dialogue with Putin because they think that diplomacy is the only solution, which in a way is correct. But I think for the time being, Europe should focus on arming Ukraine, because without that leverage and without strength, Ukraine won't be able to do a good deal. And then other leaders further to the east correctly, I think, understand that there is a potential trap in starting to talk to Russia, because Russia will then paint Ukraine as the recalcitrant party and will offer things that, frankly, should not even be considered at this point. So in a sense, talking right now is a sign of weakness. I think the Europeans should stay united. They should arm Ukraine. They should give Ukraine the financial resources to prevail. And then when Putin is ready, they'll be also ready to have a negotiation. But that won't be for many more months, possibly years down the line.
And quite unfortunate to hear. Michael, let me ask you this. Now, with everything that you mentioned, do you think that Europe is actually prepared enough to take greater responsibility for Ukraine's security, particularly as we're seeing more and more of Washington's interest increasingly focused on other global crises and elsewhere?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think the situation has changed all that much of late. I mean, yes, the United States is preoccupied with the war in Iran, with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. But frankly, the United States has not been giving Ukraine military assistance since President Trump came into office. And apparently, the intelligence sharing that the United States does with Ukraine is still ongoing. So I don't see really any fundamental change of circumstances right now in terms of the U.S.-Ukraine relationship. I think the Europeans just simply need to keep calm, keep supporting Ukraine, remain resolute, and don't fall for any sort of Russian traps in the meantime. I do think Russia is going to escalate the gray zone conflict against Europe, and that's frankly where European leaders need to focus the most right now.
Michael, I want to shift gears now and to something that took place in Poland that's causing a lot of talk here. Now, this week, President Volodymyr Zelensky awarded an elite Ukrainian military unit the honorary title Heroes of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, right, the UPA, which led to complete outrage here in Poland. I mean, across the political spectrum, from the prime minister to the president, because of course, the massacres that were carried out by this unit on some 100,000 Poles in Volhynia, right? Now, President Nawrocki says he wants to strip Zelensky off the Order of the White Eagle, right, Poland's highest title. Now, I want to ask you this. I mean, President Zelensky, I mean, he's obviously fully aware, right, of these triggering points for Poland. We all know just how much Poland has supported Ukraine since day one, right, since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Why name, Michael, one of the Ukraine's military units after the Ukrainian insurgent army when the associations are so negative? I mean, what do you make of this entire situation that's shaking up? I mean, how would you personally respond to this?
Yeah, well, to be perfectly frank with you, I think it's a foolish move. I think it's an own goal by the Ukrainians. Of course, President Zelensky is well aware of the history of the UPA. There was no need to name this military unit in its honor. It just seems like a move that was completely unnecessary. And of course, whenever Poles and Ukrainians fight over historical memory, Russia is the one that benefits. So given the fact that Ukraine, as you said, is dependent to a large degree on Polish support, Poland is the key country through which a lot of Western military equipment flows into Ukraine. It's just not a very smart move at this particular point in time. And I can't really explain it for you. I just think it's, as I said, I don't think it's a wise move.
Do you think that we would actually see now an unfortunate regression of Polish and Ukrainian relations? I mean, just when they were about to get better, are we going to somehow experience a pitfall again?
Well, hopefully there can be some diplomatic steps by both sides to try to right the course of this particular incident and put it behind both countries and look to the future. I think that's what Prime Minister Tusk is trying to do, if I read his statements correctly. But of course, this has engendered some animosity in Poland, and rightly so. But I hope that cooler heads will prevail and that diplomacy from both sides can sort of put this incident behind us.
But Michael, I mean, why do it in the first place? I mean, why have Zelensky, pull this move? And let's be honest, Ukraine hasn't really had the most positive of PR going on lately, right? What do you make of that? I mean, why pull such a move at such a time when actually, Europe should be united, particularly, I mean, Poland, one of Ukraine's top supporters, right?
Look, again, I really don't know. I mean, I think the bump of nationalistic support that this move gets in Ukraine is relatively minor. Now, there's a lot of stories in Ukraine about corruption that are swirling, including the former chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, who has been indicted. And there are other individuals who were close to the presidency who've also been implicated in various corrupt schemes. So perhaps this is an attempt to distract attention from that. But really, the war is the key priority for Ukrainians. And hopefully these sorts of issues won't distract from that, because in fact, the tide is slowly beginning to shift on the battlefield in Ukraine's favor. And so Ukraine should be capitalizing on that. Certainly the Ukrainian people want to capitalize on it. But it's a dumb move by the leadership at this particular point in time.
Thank you so much, Michael Carpenter, Senior Fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, for being my guest here and breaking it down for us on TVP World.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And that's all for this and my last edition here on World News Tonight in Warsaw. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.